Hi, I'm Bob Hildenbrand, and I'm on the adjunct faculty for the Business and Applied Technologies Department here at JCC. I want to welcome you to Introduction to Logistics. Before we begin, I'd like you to think about a common object that you use every day. So for instance, this cell phone. So think about that product and ask yourself 3 questions. Where did it come from? How did I find it? And how did it get to me? So keep those questions in mind as we go ahead and progress through the presentation. So first of all, let's talk about the things that we're going to learn today in this introduction to logistics. First of all, why logistics is important to us. Secondly, why logistics is a great field to study. What are the goals of logistics? Being able to name the key components of a supply chain ecosystem. And finally, what's the difference between logistics and supply chain? So let's talk first then about why should we even study logistics? Well, first of all, it is a very rapidly growing industry. As a matter of fact, it's one of the fastest growing career paths in Johnson County, in the region, as well as the United States. So it's a great career field to get into because the growth in this field will continue to accelerate for decades to come, for reasons that we're going to talk about in just a second. So we know that the COVID epidemic has changed our world forever. And it has elevated the term logistics and also supply chain to an understanding that was never known before. Let's just think about it. Over the last year, when you've gone to, say, a grocery store and you wanted to go buy one of your favorite and most common items, only to find that the shelves were empty, that was a very frustrating experience for you. And if you took the opportunity to ask someone in the store when the next shipment was coming in, they couldn't answer your question. So that was very frustrating for you. But the other larger issue is, let's just say we talk about the vaccines themselves. If there's problems in the supply chain, which there are right now, it's delaying the delivery of those very critical vaccinations to centers that are actually inoculating people. So it has a huge, logistics has this huge role right now in public safety. So let's move on to e-commerce, commonly known as online shopping. All of us have probably done it, and the whole concept of online shopping has exploded, not necessarily because of COVID, but prior to COVID, online shopping has continued to expand on an exponential basis, and so that has a direct impact on why logistics and supply chain are so important to our economy now. The last 2 points are very simple, but most important to the whole concept of supply chain and logistics. First of all, any product that you buy has a supply chain that is behind it. And for every supply chain, there are logistics. So how do we grade ourselves if we are in the business of logistics? And somebody who's in the business of logistics is called a logistician. And that's measured by the 5 Ps that we're going to talk about here. First of all, you've got to get the right product, you've got to get the right price, the right place, the right quantity, and the right quality to the consumer. Otherwise, they are dissatisfied and they're going to go elsewhere for with their business. And it has larger ramifications, as I mentioned earlier with the vaccines, that let's just talk about the right quantity for a moment. Let's just say you are a shipper of vaccines to an inoculation center and you have 200 less vaccines than you're supposed to in your truckload. There's going to be 200 people looking for a vaccine that won't get it that day, and that for some people could be a life and death proposition. And in terms of quality, let's just say somewhere in the supply chain, a distributor does not get the glass vials to the manufacturer to put the vaccine in on time. That's going to further delay the shipment to an inoculation center, and therefore, again, a public safety issue. So just keep that in mind about the 5 Ps. That's how we grade ourselves in logistics. Let's talk about a very simplified ecosystem. And similar to a rainforest, a natural ecosystem of a rainforest, the supply chain has an ecosystem. And what that means is that if one part of that ecosystem is not functioning properly, then the entire ecosystem is not functioning properly. So example, if there's a distributor that has a fleet of vehicles and those vehicles have maintenance problems, they will not be able to make their shipments on time or when promised. So the very first component of the ecosystem are raw materials, such as metals, minerals, anything that is a raw material of a final product. Raw materials could also be a sub-assembly of a final product, not just necessarily something that we would extract from the ground like iron ore and things like that, or coal. Suppliers are part of the ecosystem because they take all these raw materials, they bulk process them and get them to manufacturers where those raw materials are actually made into whatever product that we're wanting to buy. We have distributors who then take final products and then get them to where they need to go for consumption. And finally, there's the consumers. And consumers could be individual consumers like you and I at our homes. It could be a retail store, or it could be a wholesaler that, again, turns around and sells it at bulk. That would be something that you'd probably see in the home improvement world, where there's a distributor that delivers to, say, like a home improvement area of lumber or, say, landscape materials. Now, logistics, and this is really the core part of what we're talking about today. So logistics, very simply, it's made out of 2 components. Think about logistics as part of the ecosystem, but it is how things are moved and how they are stored. So think of transportation systems as the moving and distribution systems as the storage. So let's talk a little bit about our transport systems and the ecosystem. So let's first start with our raw materials. Our distributors, or excuse me, our suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, and our consumer. So all these flows can go both ways. And these are the major components of our ecosystem, our supply chain ecosystem, including logistics. Again, logistics provides all the movement of materials in between all these key components of the ecosystem. It's very vital to understand the difference there, because in the outer ring where we have these components of the ecosystem, it generally moves in a certain direction. It can move both ways, but logistics is actually what makes all that happen. So as you can see, logistics is a component of supply chain, but it's really a very critical part because it actually keeps everything in motion. So I hope that you understand the difference of the difference between logistics and the supply chain. So I hope that this has been interesting to you and helpful for you to understand some of the objectives that we had. You can name all the major components. You know the difference between logistics and supply chain, why it's important to our economy and to us as individual consumers, and why it's a wonderful field to actually study and to get involved in as a career. So I hope that you will come and join us at JCC in the Supply Chain Management curriculum, which starts this fall. Thank you and have a great day.